These are the stories topping the news. St. Kitts and Nevis ambassador to Cuba presents credentials. Barbados tourism sector now an export industry, and pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong protest after ruling on elections. Good afternoon and welcome to ZIZ's Midday Newscast for today, Monday, September 1st, 2014. I am J.D. Keynes. St. Kitts and Nevis' resident ambassador designate to the Republic of Cuba, His Excellency Kenneth Douglas, presented his credentials to that country's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Her Excellency Ana Teresita González Fraga. Ambassador Douglas is still considered the ambassador designate until he presents his credentials to the Vice President later this month. In presenting his credentials, the Cuban-trained diplomat highlighted the dedication and service of his predecessor, His Excellency Cedric Harper, who served as non-resident ambassador to Cuba for several years. Ambassador Harper, who resides in Kingston, Jamaica, is also the Federation's High Commissioner to Jamaica. Ambassador Douglas expressed the Federation's support to the government and people of Cuba in their continued effort to end the economic and trade embargo imposed by the United States. He also spoke of the positive light in which people ought to view Cuba and pledged to work towards strengthening of relations between Havana and Bastia. A renovated Dorset Park was officially presented to the public on Saturday evening when the Ministry of Social and Community Development hosted an opening ceremony. The ceremony, which commenced at 6 p.m., featured remarks by Chairperson Dr. Garfield Alexander and Parliamentary Representative for Constituency Number 2, the Honorable Marcella Liburd. James Barman Hanley presented a history of Dorset Park, while several Bastia residents provided entertainment through song and dance. We'll have more on Saturday's opening ceremony in tonight's major newscast. The Nevis Performing Arts Center, NEPAC, will host a globe-to-globe production of Hamlet, a play written by renowned playwright William Shakespeare, on September 4th, 2014. According to a release, the visit to Nevis forms part of a 2-year tour of every country in the world, which commenced on April 23, 2014, and marked the 450th anniversary of Shakespeare's birth. NEPAC's General Manager Deslyn Williams-Johnson told the Department of Information on Nevis that the cast and crew from the Globe Theatre in London are expected to arrive in Nevis 1 day ahead of the production. It's a big deal because they are taking the Shakespeare play to as many countries in the world as possible, Williams-Johnson said, as she appealed to teachers and students of English literature and the public to attend the historic production. The show is planned for September 4th at 7:30 p.m. at the Nevis Performing Arts Center. We move now to news on the regional scene. Barbados is to legally declare its tourism sector an export industry. That initiative is one of 2 major developments which will radically transform the sector on the island. In the second development announced recently by Finance Minister Christopher Sinclair, all tourism investors will benefit from the unprecedented incentives negotiated by leading Caribbean hotelier Gordon Butch Stewart's Sandals Resort International, SRI. The decision to declare the tourism industry an export industry is something Stewart had championed in Jamaica, arguing that it would empower the sector to compete more substantially with the industry worldwide and bring greater benefits to the local economy. During a site visit of the Sandals Barbados Resort, which is now undergoing large-scale upgrade for a January 2015 opening on the island's south coast, Sinclair announced a comprehensive and permanent overhaul of the country's tourism incentive legislation, which would recognize tourism as an export industry. Sinclair also pointed out that Sandals would not be merely bringing more rooms, but would inspire elevated standard levels in the country's tourism sector. Sinclair suggested that the new legislation would transform the industry in an unprecedented manner. St. Lucia's Minister of Education has called on parents to do more to ensure that their children attend school. Dr. Robert Lewis says too much money is being spent on education.
Minister for Education, Honorable Dr. Robert Lewis, has urged parents to invest in their children's education. The Education Minister noted that next to a mortgage, education may rank as the next most expensive investment that someone could undertake. However, the value of such an investment cannot be overstated. The minister made his comments at a meeting held with parents of students who will enter the newly established Viewford Comprehensive Secondary School, Beanfield.
The government continues to be aware of the cost of education. And parents, don't let anybody tell you that education is cheap. Education is not cheap. Next to a mortgage, maybe an education is the next most expensive venture that you will ever undertake. But when you've given your children an education, you can take from somebody land, you can take a house that they have, you can take any property that they have. There is one thing that cannot be taken away from you, is an education.
Minister Lewis also called on parents to ensure that their children attend school, as the government was expending significant sums of money on education. According to Dr. Lewis, approximately 15% of the national budget was allocated to education. However, many children were often seen during normal school hours roaming the streets.
The government cannot spend money on your children and your children are lying in the streets. The compulsory school age in this country is 15 years. There are too many children between 11 and 15 who are on the streets, and we want to ensure that we begin to make parents accountable for the money that are spent in education.
Minister assured the meeting that every effort will be exerted to tackle the vexing issue of student delinquency and called on parents to play their role in that regard. Reporting from the Ministry of Education, I am Bevan Charles.
Internationally, pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong have threatened to embark on an era of civil disobedience, including bringing the financial district to a standstill in protest against China's decision to impose strict rules for the election of the territory's next leader in 2017. When Hong Kong returned from British to Chinese rule in 1997, people were promised direct elections within 20 years. BBC's Damien Grammaticas has the story.
Vowing civil disobedience. They say this is just the start. Bigger and bigger protests will follow because they believe China is breaking its pledges to Hong Kong.
We have been promised in the basic law that we will have universal suffrage at the end. But now we'll see what actually is the end. That is the kind of election totally under control of the Chinese Communist Party.
Hong Kong's current chief executive was elected by a tiny committee, 1,000 strong. For his successor, China is offering everyone a vote. He says it's a major step forward.
If we are willing, the majority of Hong Kong people, and that is some 5 million eligible voters, will no longer be bystanders in the next CE election. We will all be able to vote for the CE in 2017 through one person, one vote.
What's dampened hopes is that one person, one vote won't mean a truly free choice. China will restrict the list of candidates to 2 or 3 it approves of, wary of letting Hong Kong's people choose anyone they like. For China's communist leaders here in Beijing, this is a highly sensitive issue. They themselves are not elected by universal suffrage. And explaining the decision today, an official here said Hong Kong's new leader will have to be above all patriotic. Otherwise Hong Kong's system simply won't work.
The Pakistani army has stepped in to remove anti-government protesters from state TV headquarters in Islamabad after they stormed the building, taking programs off the air. The station PTV has since resumed broadcasts. There were also clashes between demonstrators and police outside Parliament as the protesters called for the resignation of the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Shazeb Jilani reports.
The pressure is on the government, on the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. The army issued a statement last night in which it urged the government to resolve this politically and to not use force. And that is why I think we saw the police did not retaliate, the police did not fight back, and that's why these marchers were allowed to go on a rampage. This whole situation has brought the government to a standstill during the last 2 weeks or so, and everybody is keen for it to settle in a way that it doesn't derail Pakistan's democracy.
And now for the weather. Today's weather conditions will see partly sunny skies with temperatures reaching a high of 30 degrees. There is also a chance of scattered showers later today. Similar weather patterns can be seen tomorrow. That's it for ZIZ's Midday Newscast. Join us this evening when we present our major news package. I have been your presenter, JD Keynes. Have a wonderful day.